We are back as our storm train is about to come blasting through the West Coast. I'm ABC 10 Chief Meteorologist Monica Woods looking at the dangerous wind, rain and snow that's about to hit Northern California and really the entire state, including parts of the Pacific Northwest. And we're breaking it down by each section. Now, in terms of our specific region for Northern California, on the AR scale, the atmospheric river scale, it's going to be in the 2 moderate range here. And you can see this on this time scale, how we're basically looking at that to impact us overnight Wednesday into early Thursday. So the storm really arriving during our Wednesday. Looking at that atmospheric river scale, it runs from 1 to 5, 5 being exceptional. And we certainly saw our fair share of those last year. But this year, not so much. This one, a 2, moderate, mostly beneficial, but somewhat hazardous. So we will find some of those risks and impacts coming in as this storm makes its presence known. Right now, the main bands of rain holding off the coast. Largely, we saw on and off cloud cover picking up during our Monday and Tuesday, but the main band of rain still well off the coast. The biggest punch not coming in until later on Wednesday through Thursday. And that's because we've got a big ridge of high pressure in place. We'll talk about how that was bringing some record highs in Northern California for the past 3 days. You can see the big plume of moisture with a big subtropical tap here. That's going to feed us initially with a higher snow line. But as that colder air works in, that'll come crashing down on Thursday night through Friday. Here's a look at some of those advisories and warnings that are issued right now. Our winter storm warning goes into effect on Wednesday. In most places, it will expire Friday morning, but in some others, it will last through Saturday morning. That mainly being true for south of Highway 50, including Calaveras, Placer, Plumas, and Shasta counties. So Plumas and Shasta a little bit farther to the north, but many of those areas in the southern zones are going to hang on to some of that moisture a little bit longer. Flood watch going into effect on Wednesday. That takes us through our early Friday morning. So again, lots of these waterways are going to have a difficult time keeping up with the pace of everything coming down the hill because the valley sits so low. Any of those low-lying areas, flood-prone regions are going to have a difficult time kind of absorbing some of that water or moving it through the waterway. We'll be watching for any of those issues. Some minor roadway flooding also possible, especially for the Thursday morning commute. Our wind advisory going into place Wednesday afternoon. That takes us through early Thursday with the main impacts of these winds really coming to fruition during the evening hours on Wednesday through early Thursday. Unfortunately, with an evening event, you just can't see some of the tree branches starting to fall. You just have to kind of listen. Storm prep for tonight and early tomorrow. Make sure the phones and vehicles are charged, cleaning out the storm drains, especially if some leaves have kind of impacted those. And expect longer travel times, not only for the Sierra, but also locally for the valley, perhaps setting that alarm a little bit earlier for Thursday morning as we get ready for that morning commute. Here's the reason why. Here's a look at those winds as they start to unfold during the evening on Wednesday. Peaking at about 9 to 11 o'clock throughout the Central Valley, a little bit earlier towards the coastal valley communities like Fairfield, Vacaville, even over towards Dixon along that I-80 line. But again, 40-plus mile-per-hour peak gusts throughout the valley. Those will transition their way eastward throughout the evening and eventually make their way into the Sierra with some really difficult driving conditions overnight Wednesday through Thursday. Wouldn't be surprised if they shut down some of those roadways if there's any spinouts or even just whiteout conditions in the Sierra. Winds will be a little bit lighter by Thursday morning, but the storm is far from being over at that point. Those strongest winds really correspond to when that frontal band will be just off to the east of us, getting ready to move on through. You can see it's kind of on and off showery activity through the early part of Wednesday. It's not until we drive into those evening hours that the heavier rain starts to move through, especially for the coast. We have some real risk areas for the coastal communities with flooding becoming an issue by Wednesday evening. Here comes that main band of rain. Again, this hitting just as those winds start to kick up as well. That colder air locked in. We have a slight potential of a thunderstorm coming in during the evening hours and overnight hours. Now, Thursday morning, it looks like, oh, we're in the clear. But again, long fetch of moisture is going to keep that shower activity going in a more scattered nature, but still present for that Thursday forecast. So we do get a little bit of a break here during the morning on Thursday, but that snow line will start to move its way down as that colder air has already worked its way through. It starts off at roughly at about 6,500 feet, but then it will start to come down. Now, that being because we really had these warm conditions in place under that ridge of high pressure, record highs for the third day in a row for some places. Downtown Sacramento tying a record for our Tuesday. Stockton once again breaking the record at 74 degrees. Modesto as well, another day of breaking that record high at 70. And now we're just about to change things back to more winter-like conditions. Not the worst news, though, because we actually need to pick up on that snowpack. Today happened to be our second snow survey of the year. Our first one done on January 2nd at Phillips Station. That's up in the Sierra. Came in at 30%, statewide average at about 25 to 28%. Now, today we had that second survey of the year. Usually we'll have about 5. It's better, 58% of average at Phillips Station, but the statewide average is at 52%. So again, improvements, but we have a lot of work to do. When we compare what it looked like with our snow water equivalent, small but positive changes. The reason why we have those snow survey is because our snowpack actually supplies a third of the state water needs. You could see how thin everything was at the beginning of the year. And then a couple of storms in January did a nice job of kind of filling in the gaps. But we really need to make that a lot more present throughout the winter season because, again, once that starts to melt off, it helps fill our reservoirs and keeps us with water throughout the dry part of the year. This is quite a contrast of what we saw last year on our February snow survey, 214% of average. So we're definitely in different shape this year. This is what the snowpack looked like at that same time frame. You can see how high those snow piles are compared to this year. It's decent, but nothing like what we saw last year. Now, the good news in that is that our reservoirs are doing pretty well because we've been able to hold on to some of that water. But this becomes quite a tenuous situation for water managers because now they have to kind of vacillate between water management and flood risk and making sure that we hold on to enough water, but not so much that we're in a category where we're looking at a big flood risk. Here's a look at our atmospheric rivers. Now, these deliver the water that we need to take us through those dry months. The first one arriving during the day on Wednesday, and then we get another one moving in towards the end of the weekend. Now, this position is rather interesting. We'll still get hit in Northern California, but it does look like we're going to get a more direct hit potentially into Southern California. We just had to deal with flooding in parts of San Diego not too long ago. We could be looking at more flood risk driving its way towards the end of the weekend, beginning of February for Southern California. We get a bit of a break periodically here, but more atmospheric rivers are certainly in line as we begin February. In terms of our river forecast monitoring, we're looking pretty good. We were off to a slow start this winter season, so it's not like we have these full rivers, full reservoirs, and everything's really having trouble moving through the system. The only place that we're going to be watching is along the Sacramento River here through the Central Valley. Some rivers need to be monitored along the coast, but Tehama Bridge at the Sacramento River looks like it will indeed reach flood stage later this week. Now, many of those riverways, especially downstream, just have free-flowing weirs, which will flow freely into what is positioned to be flood areas, so it just kind of fills the space right around the river. But we'll be watching that certainly. Sacramento River at I Street, that's going to be our downtown monitoring station. Right now it's at 12.5 feet. It is expected to rise, but below that monitor stage and certainly below our flood stage. It's expected to crest on Sunday at 20.71 feet. Once we get that second system due in on the end of the weekend, we'll have to watch that for a little bit higher water. If you've been up on any of the levees or perhaps the running trail, the bike trail, that river is flowing high, fast, and really kind of muddy right now. Here's a look at our water supply for the reservoirs. Again, this is mainly above historical average because of what I showed you from last year, and water managers just held on to a little bit of water, just not knowing what this winter would bring. We're anywhere from about 55 to 80% full in the northern part of the state, and then as we travel through the central part of the state, about 60 to 83% full, still sitting above average for New Melones and Don Pedro, San Luis, there towards the coast. is at 82% of historical average. All in all, this is much better than where we were just about 2 years ago. In terms of our statewide precipitation, numbers looking decent at this point. January tends to be our biggest and wettest month, but February very much is looking like it is going to beat January in terms of total rain and snowfall. We're above average for Modesto, Stockton, and Eureka, as well as San Diego still, with some of those benefits from, unfortunately, a lot of rain. On the flip side of that, had to deal with a lot of flooding. But those numbers will likely go up, certainly by the end of this week into next week, as well as our Sierra snow water equivalent, anywhere from 35 to 60% of average throughout the Sierra spine. Some of the bigger benefits that we're seeing are in the northern part of the state. But our statewide average, I showed you a moment ago, 52%. This snow will help. I think the next snow survey is going to look dramatically different than what we saw for today, and that will come on March 1st. That's the projected date right now from the Department of Water Resources. Our winter storm severity index, as we head through this week, we're going to have some pockets in there of extreme impacts, especially towards Yosemite National Park and then through the southern Sierra. Now, the Tahoe Basin, more in the major impact zone. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have potential shutdowns of roadways or travel delays. It just means that the extreme impacts are very likely to be felt a little bit more towards the central and southern Sierra. I want to hit this excessive rainfall forecast as well. This is going to be Wednesday night into early Thursday. We are in that slight risk, especially for the coast and making its way through the Sacramento region. So that's why really those waterways on the river line of the Sacramento River need to be watched in particular, as well as towards the Delta. We'll be watching that. Marginal risk through the northern San Joaquin Valley and off towards the eastern foothill communities and towards the lower Sierra. Our active weather this week, this really lays out what we're expecting Wednesday night into Thursday. That's going to be our main zone with the brunt of the storm moving through. Snow level starts off at about 6,500 feet. Just for reference, passes are above 7,000 feet. We're going to see snow on the passes. Thursday, we start to see that snow level drop more so to about 5,000 feet. We'll see the heaviest rain taper off, but scattered showers continuing through Friday. Saturday is mostly dry. I can't completely discount an isolated shower out of Saturday's forecast, unfortunately, just because how much moisture is associated with this system. Again, Wednesday morning's commute, it's a dry one. It's during the afternoon and the evening that we start to see the brunt of the storm picking up with that snow line, as you'll notice, starts to come down the hill. This is when that cold air starts to work in with breaks in there. But this is going all the way through our Saturday morning forecast with some of our upper foothills and lower Sierra communities getting in on the snow that has been largely absent from this winter season. As far as total rainfall, about 1 inch to almost 2 inches of rain coming in for the coast as well as the Central Valley and for much of the foothills. And then as we travel through the Sierra, we'll pick up about 1 to 2 feet of snow. Now that's in a time frame from Wednesday evening all the way through Saturday morning. So this isn't going to be just one big punch of snow coming in 24 hours. That's a rather large time frame to look at some of that snowpack. Some areas will get close to about 3 feet, but the main impact will be that Wednesday night into Thursday morning with the heaviest snow there. And you can see that snow line really coming down. Now, 3,000 feet on Saturday, it's more about 3,500 feet, and most of the snow, quite frankly, will be over by then. But this is really opening us up to be in a likely cooler setup for the long-range forecast all the way through almost the middle of February. So we've been loving these spring-like conditions, but now we're going to go back to winter and likely wetter. And you'll notice here's kind of that bullnose of potentially that likely wetter category through Southern California. That's why I kind of want to watch what's going on there with our precipitation and the higher risk coming in right towards Los Angeles, through San Diego, parts of Santa Barbara, really the central and southern coast there, and even parts of the desert Southwest. For the northern part of the state, more in that moderate risk zone, that's going to be our 8 to 14 day weather hazard outlook. It's certainly one to watch. Nothing that's a for sure bet. And we go into that slight risk category for the 8 to 14 day outlook for the Sierra and even towards Shasta. The higher risk will start to move its way through the Intermountain West. Again, this is a little far out, but something we're going to be watching just like we did with this current storm making its way through. You'll see throughout the entire state really starting to see that rain picking up during the overnight on Wednesday through Thursday. And then for the Pacific Northwest, it's starting to actually dry out a little bit as this shifts its way southward. Now we get a bit of a break on Saturday, but this is the duration of this storm system. And then again, it's just one storm system. It's going to be pretty prolonged. We get into Sunday, and here comes that next line of wet weather all the way through Southern California. Starting to see snow. Going to have to watch if we see snow on the Grapevine on Sunday. That's a big travel day for some folks trying to make their way back up through Northern California or perhaps down into Southern California to head that way. Tuesday, we're still looking at some lingering showers, but that particular system starting to move its way out, kind of get the back edge of a rain event moving through during the day on Wednesday. And yet Friday, starting to watch yet another one. That's why we're really looking at a prolonged period of on and off showers through the beginning of February. Highs for tomorrow in the 40s for the Sierra. We're in the 50s and 60s as we make our way through the foothills. Tomorrow's still a really mild day for us before that colder air starts to work in. Near 60 along the coast for San Francisco and Oakland, Fairfield at 57, Vacaville 56, Rio Vista in the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta at 57 degrees. And then for the Central Valley, we'll be right around 60 to 65. Still a warm day for many of us. Davis a little cooler at 56, Yuba City at 61. But then that cold air starts to work in. We jump out of the 40s in the Sierra into the 30s on Thursday, only 32 for an afternoon high in the mountains on Friday. For the foothills, it's mainly a rain event, but some of those very upper foothills, the potential to see a few snowflakes. And for the coast, it's just going to be on and off rain through that 5-day forecast, and really for the Central Valley as well. As you can see with our 10-day forecast, we've got rain on Wednesday, slight chance of a thunderstorm on Thursday. On and off showers continue into next week with temperatures staying in the 50s. Stay dry out there.